Welcome back, everyone. Today we are unpacking a chilling Hindi Kahani, or story, that is literally going to send shivers right down your spine. We're diving straight into the haunting of Ramganj Station. But hey, be warned right up front, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill campfire ghost story. It's actually a brilliant narrative that uses supernatural horror to expose some very real, very grounded societal issues. So let's step straight onto this desolate railway platform and uncover exactly what happened. I want you to keep this one central question in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer. Can a corrupt system literally become haunted by the victims of its injustice? This story brilliantly uses a haunting to explore the heavy, real-world consequences of corruption and nepotism. What actually happens to the voices that are silenced by unfair systems? Do they just fade away into nothing? Or do they linger in the shadows, demanding a terrifying reckoning? Well, let's find out. Okay, let's dive into this. We start by meeting our protagonist, Ashika. And right out of the gate, the story establishes her extreme privilege. Get this. She wakes up at 4 p.m., realizes she's incredibly late for a job interview, and just rushes over. And when she gets there, she doesn't even wait her turn. She just strolls right past all the other hopeful candidates and literally takes the seat of a girl who was already in the middle of her interview. The interviewer hands her the offer letter, but drops this scathing reality check. He tells her she's getting the station master position purely because of her father's influence. But Ashika, she's completely unbothered. She even mocks the other girls on her way out the door. Following the interviewer's advice to arrive early for her first shift, Ashika decides to take a night train to her new posting. But the moment she steps off that train, the atmosphere just completely shifts. Ramganj railway station is absolutely not a bustling, lively hub. It is desolate. It is completely isolated, and it's shrouded in this heavy, pitch-black darkness. The station master's office is locked up tight, and there's literally no one around. The original story does a fantastic job building this immediate creeping sense of dread. Ashika is expecting this nice, comfortable arrival, and instead, she finds herself entirely alone on an empty platform, just waiting for someone, anyone, to let her in. So as she's waiting out there on a bench in the dark, she actually drifts off, and she has this absolutely terrifying dream of a woman with long, messy hair covering her face, just staring at her from across the tracks. Ashika jolts awake, only to find this incredibly creepy old watchman standing right over her in the dim light. Yikes, right? He finally unlocks the office for her, and when she asks why the station feels so dead, he casually explains that it's a ghost station. He tells her the nearest village is 10 kilometers away, and the locals, they actively avoid this cursed place at night. They won't come anywhere near it. And this moment brilliantly illustrates the complete lack of empathy in the system that runs this place. When Ashika presses the watchman about why it's a ghost station, he just casually dismisses a tragic loss of life. He calls the victim a mad woman who just decided to lay on the tracks, causing a nuisance that somehow cursed the whole station. Oh, and then he casually drops the horrifying little detail that the previous officer met a gruesome, agonizing death by being crushed under a train. Which, by the way, is exactly why the office had been sealed shut by the police until tonight. He says all of this with the casual annoyance of someone discussing like bad weather. Now, the inside of the office perfectly reflects the corruption of the whole place. It's littered with old cigarettes, a broken TV, and rotting food left behind by that deceased former officer. Gross. The watchman does a super quick sweep to clean up, but here's where the tension really starts to build. Ashika, still acting super entitled, orders him to go fetch her some food. And the watchman? He flatly refuses. He states he was only there to hand over the keys because of the ghost, and then he makes a hasty retreat. He essentially runs out of there, leaving Ashika frustrated and completely alone in that dark, decaying office. So, the watchman is walking away from the desolate station, muttering to himself about how annoying and demanding city people are, when suddenly, his phone rings. He answers it, and guys, the voice on the other end is Ashika. Yep, she's calling to apologize. She tells him that her plans changed at the last minute, and she actually didn't end up taking the night train after all. She says she won't be arriving until noon tomorrow, 12 p.m., and asks him to open the office for her then. Okay, stop and think about this for a second. The watchman stops dead in his tracks. A massive chill runs down his spine. Put yourself in his shoes right now. If the real Ashika is safely at home on the phone, telling him she won't be there until tomorrow, who in the world did he just unlock the sealed office for? Who is the woman currently sitting in the station master's chair in the dead of night? The horrifying realization hits him like a freight train, but before he can even think about running away, it is way too late. The entity inside the office was never Ashika. It was a vengeful ghost all along. The spirit violently confronts him in the darkness, choking him, and as she's suffocating him, she furiously screams, "What did you say? That I was mad?" The spirit reveals her true identity. She is Gita, the so-called mad woman who died on the tracks, and she has been waiting at Ramganj station specifically for him. Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is how the story violently shifts into a flashback right here to explain exactly why Gita is so enraged. It juxtaposes two very different people competing for the exact same job. On the one side, we have Ashika, right? She got the job purely through her father's influence, despite being late, disrespectful, and completely unearned. But on the other side, we learn about a man named Ramesh. Just 2 months prior, Ramesh took those same railway exams and scored the absolute highest marks. He was hardworking, dedicated, and he earned the position fair and square. The source material paints such a heartbreaking picture here. Ramesh had rushed home to his wife Geeta completely overjoyed. He told her they could finally afford to put their daughter Mooni into a good school. But the very next day, he was told the job was given to someone else, someone with far lower marks but much higher connections. The sheer devastation of being crushed by a rigged, corrupt system completely broke Ramesh. He went home and wrote a suicide note apologizing to his wife because, as he put it, the world only advances those with reach. And then he tragically took his own life in despair. This right here is the true chain of injustice. Just imagine the devastating pain of doing everything right only to be crushed by a corrupt system. One single act of nepotism rapidly destroys an entire family. 2 months ago, Ramesh earns the job. The next day, nepotism steals it and he dies by suicide. Left with a child and no husband, a grieving Geeta goes to the station to demand justice. She's shouting that the person inside is sitting in her husband's rightful chair. And who was there? The watchman. Instead of showing an ounce of compassion, he violently shoved Geeta out of the station. Shattered by the loss and the humiliation, Geeta threw herself under a train that very same night. And that brings the narrative slamming right back to the terrifying present. Geeta's spirit isn't just some mindless monster out to scare people. She is a direct agent of retribution against the system that destroyed her family. She tells the gasping watchman that the previous corrupt officer already got his punishment. Remember, he was the one crushed by a train? And as a roaring train approaches the platform in the present, she looks at the watchman and simply declares, "Now it's your turn." She exacts her bloody, supernatural justice on the very man who physically threw her out when she was begging for help. The story then brilliantly cuts to the next morning. The sun is up, the horrific, violent events of the night have passed, and the desolate Ramganj station is quiet once again. A morning train pulls up to the platform, the doors slide open, and out steps the real Ashika. She has finally arrived, completely oblivious to the massacre that occurred the night before, and totally unaware of the heavy, blood-soaked history of the job position she didn't actually earn. As Ashika looks around the empty station, someone approaches her. It's the spirit of Geeta. But Geeta isn't appearing as a terrifying monster right now. No, she calmly walks right up to Ashika and delivers this absolute chilling cliffhanger of an introduction. She says, "You are Ashika, right? I am the new station master. Let me open the office for you." Geeta's ghost, now literally posing as the ultimate authority of the station, slowly leads the oblivious, privileged Ashika toward the cursed office to face the consequences of her unearned privilege. It's just so incredibly dark. Honestly, this story is so much more than a ghost story. It is an absolute masterclass in using supernatural horror as a metaphor for real-world issues. The anatomy of this haunting starts not with a demon or a curse, but with a painfully mundane act of nepotism that creates innocent victims like Ramesh. And when those victims cry out for help, the corrupt system, represented perfectly by that watchman, silences and discards them. Because they couldn't find justice in life, they are forced to return in death to demand it. The system literally becomes haunted by its own unchecked corruption. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. When the system completely fails and the very people meant to uphold fairness discard you like garbage, how far will those broken spirits go to claim their justice? It really makes you look at the whole concept of a haunting in a completely different, much more tragic light, doesn't it? Well, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope this breakdown gave you a new appreciation for how deep and analytical these dark tales can truly be. Until next time, stay curious and, maybe double check who is actually opening the door for you.